Me today. I'm really excited to have Zach Johnston, drinks editor for UPROXX. All around great guy, knows everything. Well, teaches me everything I know about whiskey. So man, it's so fun to have you joining me for one of these finally.
Yes, well, thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited, one, to be talking about whiskey with you, but also just to be hanging out and drinking whiskey.
Yeah, so we've had the pleasure of working together quite a bit, judging both San Francisco and New York World Spirits competitions. Now we got to go on picks with each other, which was a lot of fun.
Oh,
And
yeah.
those will be coming out hopefully later this year, probably a little bit early next year. Um, and then we've also sent you a number of single barrels, including the ones that we have in front of us. So I can't wait to just jump in and explore these top flight releases and learn a little bit about what you think about them.
Let's do it, man. I'm excited. I'm gonna give you a little spoiler alert. I did like get my footing on these before we came on here, so I'm not gonna be, completely surprised. But there's some great whiskeys ahead, so I'm looking forward to diving back in.
All right, well, we're gonna start. Start heavy with American single malt. So
Yeah.
we're jumping in. Jumping straight into the deep end with Westward whiskeys. This is our what we call our switchback barrel. And the reason why we call it switchback is really it's a nod to those hikers and when you're hiking those switchbacks up in the mountains. And that's a little like nod to the barrel that aged this whiskey. It's lived a number of lives. It's had a number of paths in this journey. So before I get into how it was aged, man, just first thoughts on this whiskey.
I mean, the nose is so unique, sort of almost baffling in a good way that it draws you in because there's a lot of herbaceousness, a lot of like botanicals,
Mhm.
and it's a little citrusy, honey. Like I you could almost be pushed to be like, is this even a whiskey or is it like some funky French brandy sort of thing going on?
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
so much going on the nose, and it's one thing I love about Westward is that they're willing to try new things. They're willing to push the envelope. They're willing to really experiment, and it always seems to kind of work out.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Who would have thought?
right.
And they have this really great um, this focus as being beer brewers first, right? And I
Right.
think that leads into part of the aging of or what was aged in this barrel, because they always, from from the conversations we've had, it sounds like they have just great relationships with breweries and other distillers in the area and just have this very reciprocal relationship of just sharing, experimenting, kind of sharing that mutual delight.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the Portland way, right? Like it is still
Yeah.
a very small city, and really it's more like small towns within sort of a city. So you got the West Side and Burnside and East Side and all that, and you really get a sense when you go to the distillery, if you ever get a chance to anyone watching out there, it's you really get a sense of the community when you're there. Like brewers
Totally.
will come over and grab a drink at the distillery when they get off their shift, and vice versa. And when you go out at night, you bump into people that are just out and about in Portland who work at the distillery or at these breweries, and it's a really tight knit community.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. I'm ready for that sip.
Yeah.
I
Cheers.
just finished. I just finished some emails, so I'm ready to jump into
Yeah.
this whiskey.
Hmm. I mean, the proof does come through on the tongue a little bit,
Mm,
but
yeah.
there's so much citrus and honey and almost like a syrupy maltiness. Like it's like caramelized, but it's not malty as in like a cracker or a cookie. It's malty like a syrup, like almost
And
like
you
a
know what?
syrup you put in a milkshake.
And what's interesting, I don't. This is so random as a tasting note, but this on the finish, I almost get like wildflowers, like
Ooh, okay.
dandelions and like just
Yes.
like the those great like as you're out like botanical garden, you just kind of get all those great like wildflowers out there in the
Mm,
summer and the spring. I mean that there's that nuance there that's so unique.
mm. Absolutely, and it's such a fun ride. Again, you do get that sort of like grainy, malty craftiness on the nose, but the way it presents on the palate is so just. Even for me, like if you take a little sip of water, you get a little bit of like creamed floral honey
Mm,
on the end. It gets really soft.
yeah,
It's a really just for me. Obviously, I'm a fan of Westward. I think you guys can tell that by now.
yeah,
But this is sort of quintessential. But there is that little bit more to it that's kind of hard to pin down. That is, it's almost like a little botanical hint, like a
yeah.
little bit of not. It's not like juniper, but it's like juniper adjacent.
Well, and yeah, and so let's a little reveal on the life of this barrel. So we actually had a great opportunity to go to dinner with the team, and in conversation, we went to the Multnomah Whiskey Library, which is
Nice.
incredible.
Yeah.
And there was this conversation about this, like, it almost was like this mythical barrel of, hey, we're trying this experiment where this barrel has lived many lives to impart different profiles, right? So it started by aging westward for 4 years. That barrel then went and aged aviation gin for about a year.
Right.
Then that same barrel gets sent down the street to, and I have to look it up because I forgot, Breakside Brewery to then age in IPA, and then they sent it right back down the road, back to Westward to put in 2-year old American single malt from Westward back in for 4 more years. And so, man,
It's incredible.
it's such a cool experiment of like honoring the single malt because you always get that maltiness throughout, but then
Yeah.
getting some of those nuances from the gin, some of those nuances from the IPA, and then breaking those back into that single malt.
And it's sort of like a Portland Ouroboros, man. It's like
Yeah.
it and that's just it. Like the old Tom Jim just barely sneaks through. I think it's a little more on the nose than the palate, but it is
Mm-hmm.
there, and it's great that I think that floral sense from the IPA is definitely there on the finish, and so you get this like wonderful, just layered whiskey that's wholly unique. And it's
Absolutely.
and it's kind of. I mean, I hate to say this, kind of what you expect from Westward at this point, like something really
Yeah.
special every time, which puts a lot of pressure on
Absolutely.
them. I apologize to the crew out there, but it is just like, I mean, this is also something like if someone is truly looking for like a high watermark in American single malt right now, this is a good place to start.
Yeah, and the fun part is this truly is one of a kind. So it was an experiment
Right,
that they were like, we don't think we're ever going to do this again. So
right, right.
if you want something that it's really not coming back, this is really going to be one of those releases from Westward that will be truly unique,
Yeah,
and outstanding. Actually, a number of their series releases oftentimes are just end up just being beloved single barrel releases. So everything they put out in that spectrum is always fun.
absolutely. It's a wonderful whiskey, and also, I mean, not to get too deep in the weeds, like it's also well priced for what it is. I mean, it's not cheap, of course, but it is one of those things where you're like, I can't believe I'm getting this single barrels. That's so unique. Like you said, the Breakside IPA, the Aviation Old Tom, like this is something you're just never going to see again. So the fact that this isn't like a $500 bottle
Yeah,
is incredible.
they didn't know what they had. They had no idea. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's transition to the second one because I feel like this quickly became a
I know, right?
Westward session. So man, so our second bottle, this
There we go.
Jefferson's Twin Oak.
First
So
of all, I love these bottles. This is all great.
yes, yeah. I mean Jefferson's really has that super nuanced, like old school look to it. I mean, this always has bar presence. Anytime you put this on a bar, people are like, "Hey, what's going on here?" I love Twin Oak because they're taking what they're already doing in their core bourbon selection, and then amping it up by trying now a different cutting approach and a different toasting approach to that second barrel. to
Right.
try to impart something totally unique. And I think part of that also really helps not allowing it to become over oaked, right? Like
Right.
it is oaky, but I think their approach
It
allows you to
is.
still get a lot of nuance.
It's interesting, right? Because like the wavy grooved uh, grooves and the staves, create more surface space, so there's more interaction in a short amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. What's interesting though is, yes, it is oaky on the nose to begin with, but if you give it time, get a nice like vanilla cream, and you get
Mm,
sort of a little bit of a dark orange, and maybe even a little dark like stewed apple butter. Like there's a lot going on here, which is sort of expected with Jeffersons because they have a keen sense of layering and flavors. What's interesting is it's almost there's a little bit of chocolate in there too, maybe.
oh, totally. All right,
It's
let's
really
jump in.
nice. So,
I'm ready.
hmm, hmm. See, this is interesting. I didn't really expect it to go this direction on the palate, wherein there's a little bit of crafty graininess, like almost
Mhm.
a touch of like sweet grits, but then it veers back towards that sort of toasted oakiness, like almost a little bit like kindling, and then it comes right back to that fruit and creaminess and honey, not honey, caramel, and almost more of like a toffee. Um, and it doesn't taste like an old school Jefferson's because I feel with Jefferson's there's a little bit of salinity sometimes, and they tend to go kind of more towards the classic earthy bourbons. Where this
Absolutely.
goes, this is going more towards the woodiness, sure, but it's almost like a nuttiness, woodiness, and there's caramel in there, and there's. I just keep going back to apple butter too.
Yeah, and I love. I mean, when you were talking about that, like that creamy, like that velvetiness. Excuse me. Like I'm thinking also like I'm getting a little like that butterscotch, like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
it man, it's fun.
I would also. I mean, it's funny because it's so dependent on where you are, but it does kind of smell like being in a barrel warehouse a little bit.
Hmm.
So you know the wood's around you, but you're not getting overpowered by the wood.
Totally. Actually, that's a great. I mean, that's a great call out. You close your eyes a little bit, and
Mhm.
you're just like, oh, I'm right back into one of those rick houses, just letting
Yeah.
everything settle a bit.
And also, I love the proof on this, man. Like 90.2. There's a nice little bit of a heat punch at the end with that spice, and
Yeah,
it's very wood bark spices, and then it just mellows right back out in that creaminess. So you get a little bump, and reminding you that you're drinking, whiskey, and then
yeah,
and then it just mellows right back out so nicely. And I think I said this today. This is a great sipping neat bourbon because you don't need a cube, you don't need water. You can just right out of the bottle sip it neat and not be blown away by ABVs.
absolutely. Yeah, it's solid, and I mean, I did bring glasses to throw some stuff on cubes, but like to your point, this is one where you don't need to touch it. And having put this on ice before, like more of that oakiness kind of comes out,
Right.
a little bit of that smoke, and it's so balanced. So it's continuing kind of um, that same flow, which is really fun. I get a little bit like oatmeal cookie
Yeah. Yeah.
when you put it on ice, which is really fun.
Yeah, I dig that. I can dig that for sure. And almost like like with a tiny bit of water, the chocolatiness comes out a little bit more.
Mhm.
But really, it is an oak show though. Like
Yeah,
that is
for
the center.
sure. I mean, and that's what it is, right? A twin
Yeah.
oak, right? Like we're really honoring the use of New American oak and trying, different ways of both cutting and toasting it.
Yeah, and that's what's promised on the label. So if you
Yeah,
buy something called Twin Oak, you expect a little bit of wood in there.
yeah. You should know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, yeah. That said, man, I could just see you sitting on the back porch and sipping on that so easily.
Yeah, not in Texas right now, but maybe
Yeah,
maybe in October.
right. Yeah. Oh man.
All right, well let's jump to our third. Man, so excited about this one. Barrel Craft Spirits. Um,
This
one of
is
my
crazy.
favorites, just favorite brands to work with that is sourcing just some incredible things. And I think that the mindset and approach of this team to create consistency in their core, with some relative variation, but also just having a point of view on
Yeah,
what they're selecting and knowing like what should go into what finishes. Now we're not in a finished whiskey. This is a bourbon, so this is a bourbon single barrel cask strength. Everything from Barrel Craft Spirits is cask strength. What's unique about this one and why we're blown away by it is the mash bill. So 99% corn, 1% rye.
yeah.
Who would have thought, man? This
Who
this is
would?
something this is
And
something crazy.
8 years. That's a fair amount of time for
Yeah.
that much corn distillate to hang out in wood. What's crazy, and I noticed this earlier today too. If you pop the cork and smell it out of the bottle, it smells like grape soda.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
wild,
All
and
right.
that is not at
I'll be right
all on the
back.
nose,
Oh man, I get okay. I see you.
right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But then you go to the actual glass, and it's like a massively complex bourbon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you get a little bit of that like cherry candy in there, but there's like dark chocolate and marzipan
Oh yeah.
and toasted wood, and it's like barrel. It's like a barrel bourbon that just keeps going and going. Like we could
Hmm.
be here for a half an hour and probably still be like, and there's sandalwood and there's this and there's that. Like it's just such a beautiful nose, man. And I just love how it changes even from the bottle experience to the glass.
Yeah, and I think what's also nice about this is, I mean, coming in at 106, what nearly 107, man,
Yeah.
it is such a balance. Like the nose is like soft and refined.
Yeah.
You still have a great pour. I mean, 106 is nothing to shake at. I know a lot of folks are
No,
getting much higher than that now, but I think like this is like that perfect point for this whiskey. It is. Um, yeah, the nose isn't like it's
it's
not
just
burning your nose off, right? It's a
no, and
great
there's
scent.
so much going on in there. Like I just got a little bit of like Christmas decorations. I got a little bit of like mint cake, like just so much beautiful stuff. And I agree as well. Like 107, 54%. I think that's like the sweet spot because it's sort of
Mhm.
you can make a great cocktail with it and it will hold up. You can sip it neat, then you won't, blow your face off. Or you can pour it over the rocks and it's still going to open up and be beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like
Totally.
versatile, and this is just like I said, I could sit here and smell this all day.
Yeah. I'm now getting like gingerbread, which is fun.
Okay, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's this sort of like I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like your backyard on a summer day where it's like the lawn furniture's out, like the grass is kind of dry, like the deck's dry and hot, and like it's just like sitting in the backyard on a summer's day. I don't know how else to
Yeah.
describe it. You know what I mean? It's
All
just
right, let's
beautiful.
jump in.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother.
Mm.
Mm.
Man alive, that is
Wow.
some good bourbon.
Man, I mean, wow. I'm getting dark chocolate. I'm getting some caramel in there. I'm
Oh,
getting some, I mean, definitely a little oakiness in there, which is fun.
sure.
Like
It's got
it's
like a creamy marzipan center,
yeah.
like, but there's also like really nice food, like candied orange, and maybe even some candied berry, and like it's so just nuanced, but there's so much going on, and you just kind of want to go in all these different directions. And yeah, like I said, this is one of my favorite pours in a long time. It's just phenomenal. And there's only one barrel.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they also really know what they're doing, which is great. And
Right.
you know,
Well, it's interesting because when you like let's be frank, when you think of like 100% corn or 99% corn whiskey, bourbon or not, your brain is going to go towards those really earthy sort of,
Sure.
corn husk, that sort of like, chewing on a corn cob that's been rolled in the dirt. And, there's a lot of like earthiness to that. That's countered by obviously the sweetness of the corn. And so you get that sort of like, okay, you get the caramel corniness and then you get the earthiness of it. And that's sort of, depending on how long it's aged, the direction you're going in. This is such a different beast that I would never in a million years guess it was a 99% corn bourbon. Like it,
Yeah.
um, it's just, and the nuance to it, like you said, there's that little touch of oakiness in the middle that just pops in. The gingerbread, the caramel, the chocolate. It's just so much going on. It all works.
When I think to your earlier point, the age behind this, it's very likely that just with that amount of time, the barrel has really been able to do its work, right? Like
Yeah,
it's really some of those notes you might get off of a younger corn whiskey uh, that are clearly a corn whiskey,
right.
like they really blend out into a very balanced bourbon. Like this is
Absolutely.
a quality like bourbon pour. Um, and I do think it's those later years that really gives it that extra.
Yeah, that 8 years, it's just really, and don't get me wrong, there is an earthiness to it still. Like I said,
Mhm.
on the nose, that sort of like back porch summer day vibe, that's earthiness. It's just dialed into a very nostalgic earthiness, I guess, for me.
Yeah, and I think especially like at the very end of that finish, you get a little bit of that earthiness as well. You kind of get it
Yeah,
at the beginning and at the very end,
yeah.
and in the middle, you're like in this adventure in bourbon.
I love that, an adventure in bourbon in the middle. Yeah, that's
So come
perfectly
on an
accurate.
adventure with us.
Yeah, and again, like,
But is
it's
it? I
only,
mean, that's really
I want another barrel. Like, there's got to be more of this
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, and this is really actually what Barrel Craft Spirits does, right? Like, I mean, we've made a number of selections that are also finished whiskeys where like they really know like the journey that they're trying to take people on, and that actually for me as a buyer makes I mean it makes having a partnership with a brand like them such a delight because you know that every time you go in, you're going to be surprised by something
Yeah,
and they really have a point of view on the why, which is really fun.
yeah, and it's that sort of expert stewardship. They didn't just pull this
Yeah,
barrel from the ether and put it in a bottle. Like they took care of this barrel for years, likely, in their warehouse here in Louisville. And it's that like extra special attention to these barrels. And you see a few other bottlers doing this as well, where they're taking the time to make sure this barrel is going to be in its best possible place before it goes in the bottle.
absolutely. All right. Well, we have one last stop on this single barrel journey.
Taking
Again,
the trolley.
all of these releases are available right now on Reserve Bar as a part of our Top Flight Series program. Our Top Flight Series is our Reserve Bar exclusive highly curated approach to single barrels. So before we put anything out, there's been a panel of individuals that will taste every single release, make sure that it's something that we want and know the why.
Right.
Taking what we were just talking about, like, hey, what we started with Westward, super unique selection, but we knew exactly why we were picking it, and have that point of view, even if it's not for everyone or might be a little too nuanced for some folks. We know that those collectors, those ones that want something they'll never see again, hey, that was it.
Yeah.
Same thing with all of these, and same thing with this in my hand. So Old Potrero, coming from the 7x7 San Francisco, one of my favorite places, one of the places I've lived.
Yeah.
um, Old Potrero has been distilling now for what, nearly 20 years, I believe.
Believe so.
and and what I love about this is 100% malted rye. So, going through that malting process with their rye, I think really just helps add. some unique profile components, and we'll get into that into the tasting. But such a fun brand.
Yeah, and it's it's a truly unique one as well because there's it is actually made in San Francisco. It's made on pot stills. There it's tends to be unique grains as well. So it's not just your average mash bill ever, um, and it's aged well in a unique place, and it smells unique.
Yeah.
It smells good too. I mean, this is a it's got like that little bit of like almost like a green chili spice to it over like
Oh
green
man.
chili over oatmeal cookies.
Wow. Okay. Oh, you know what? I get you on that green chili. I see where you're coming
Yeah,
from for sure.
yeah, it's really like it's interesting because it does have a little bit of like maltiness to it. Um, Obviously the
Yeah.
malted rye, but the maltiness is sort of I don't know. It's fascinating because there's a nice like right at the top. There's a nice little sort of like cinnamon spice, like almost like a red hot or a hot tamale. It's a fascinating nose because
You know, and I think the oatmeal cookie is actually a really great way to say it because in that oatmeal cookie, there's a little bit like there's that graininess to it
mm,
that leads into sweetness, right? And I
yeah,
think when I think about oatmeal cookie as it relates to a tasting note, I'm thinking of both like the oats, which is like that graininess, plus that sweetness, um, and add in like some chocolate in there, that caramel in there. Like those are the like that oatmeal cookie of that pairing is what I love finding, especially in a malted grain whiskey, right? Like
yeah.
I think it comes out really well in this one as well.
It just smells so good. I mean, as you know, we've tasted lots and lots of whiskey together. I'm not like the hugest like grain forward guy, like, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the grain forwardness of something that's really well balanced like this, where there's so much more than just the grain there. Yes, you can smell that, like you just explained so well with the oats and the sweetness, but
Well,
there's so many
and I
different
also think
spices.
for those folks that aren't quite in with rye yet, I mean this is definitely a rye where I think the malting subdues some of those like typical, like if you get 100% rye next to this, they're completely different flavor
Yeah.
profiles.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I really think that creates a unique balance in character for this one.
absolutely, yeah. Just because this is deep, this is kind of deeper and darker as well. Like because some of
All
those
right,
100% ryes are like grassy and bright and almost like
yeah,
floral. And cheers, man.
and this one is more subdued. It's like in
Yeah,
there, yeah. Cheers,
yeah.
man.
It's got a little more kick to it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it comes in at 130.
But it's yeah,
So
it doesn't feel that kicky. A spearmint. I get a lot of spearmint.
totally, that spearmint is high in there for sure.
Yeah.
I'm getting, like that dark chocolate,
Mm.
still
Oh
getting
yeah.
like those grains in there, which is fun. Um, man,
There's a nice sort of there's a nice spice to it though as well. Like the spearmint obviously and the graininess is nice, lovely and caramelized. But there's a sort of like it's almost like a winter spice mix where you're getting a little bit of clove, a little bit of anise, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg.
yeah,
It's interesting because it's sharp. This is a really sharp uh, whiskey in comparison to some of the other ones, which were really creamy. Not really
yep,
getting that creaminess, which is again, it's a
mm-mm.
rye. You wouldn't really, creaminess would be
Expected.
yeah expected, but it's not green. Like this, you can tell this is a deep dark rye.
Yeah, this is where as you get into the fall, like all of those spices you put into like a pumpkin pie. So
Yes.
the clove, ginger, cinnamon, sugar.
Yep.
I feel like I'm forgetting one. There's a fifth, I think. Like it's like all of those are in that finish, and it's
Yep.
it's great. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah. It feels like the season is upon us, even though it's
Yeah.
August still and a million degrees everywhere. It's like I could probably make a pumpkin pie by the end of the month, like, um, and maybe put this in instead of the vanilla. No, but I do really want to try this over like a single rod just to see because I'm sure there's going to be some darker choco notes that are going to come out, and maybe some more like chili notes and things like that, because it feels like there's some more complexity underneath that ABV.
Well, now that you say it, might as well might as well give that a try.
Nice. I will actually do that again, except I'm just going to do it with a couple drops of water.
Yeah, great. And yeah, I think this Old Portero, incredible pick. We
Yeah,
actually
love this
taking
stuff.
you behind the curtain a little bit. We just made a second pick of this.
Oh, nice.
So and we're going with a toasted barrel with our second
Ooh,
pick. So
interesting.
man, so those two things together, I mean, it opens it up that much more.
Yeah,
So I'm really excited for that to come out later this year. Really fun partnership with Old Portero.
right. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the brand, and the team there is, I mean, second to none. I mean, it's just amazing people, amazing stiller, um, and also they're doing like they're sticking to their guns. They're
Mhm.
still doing open pot stills. They're still, making sure that the grains are right, and they're taking their time with these and really sort of putting out something special that you can't really get. Like, there's not really another rye like this.
Mm-mm.
I would say on my end, with just a little water, I get some like dark fruit leather. So a
Oh
little bit
yeah,
of like, and like if somebody made a really fancy fruit roll up at like, French Laundry or something like that, I do get a little more of like a little bit of maybe scrub brush, like I'm on a hike somewhere. I'd say the grain takes sort of a back seat when I add water. The grain takes sort of a back seat to more of the spices.
absolutely. I think yeah, I think getting back to the hiking conversation we had at the beginning, when you're out there and you have like all those like uh, dried flowers around you that are now kind of almost hay, like the dried grass.
Yeah.
That's that finish there on the front with the ice cube. I almost get like a chocolate malt ball, like those.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. Like
Man,
what are they called? Maltesers, but what do we call them?
yeah, I don't know what the actual name is. I just
Yeah, I only know the British name because I'm that asshole. um, definitely get more like dry fruit spice on the palate. So sort of like
oh
if you
yeah,
like make a mincemeat pie, like with the raisins and dates and like mixed in with all the spices and like a little bit of butteriness.
yeah,
But
that's
it's
awesome.
yeah, it really opens up in an interesting way. And again, not your average rye. Like if you're thinking like a Kentucky rye with that like grassy, fruity, sweet note, or something like that, this isn't going to be it.
Yeah, Billy helped us out. It's Whoppers.
Whoppers, thank you. Yes,
Whoppers. Thank you, Billy. Man,
yeah, definitely Whoppers for sure. Which is a
it's
really good
it's
pull.
unique because you get that milk chocolate outside, and then when you crunch it, you get some of uh, that texture of maltiness, right?
Right,
And so that is just like perfect,
spot on. Yeah.
right on that first sip.
Oh man, this is yeah. I think you could tell by my effusing that I'm a big fan of the barrel bourbon single barrel, and like this also, I'm just a really big fan of this in general. I mean, I'm a fan of most old Botero single barrels. I find them to be just excellent usually. Um, and then I'm a rye guy, so like I'm really drawn to this because it's so like deep and dark.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't sleep on those ryes. I mean, I think it's
Hmm.
a smaller segment within
Yeah,
within the whiskey space, but man, there are so many distilleries creating such dynamic flavors in rye, and this is just a great example of it. That's why we had to put it on this panel. It's just such a perfect example of really the depth of flavor that you can create and how unique this is as 100% rye
right.
from other 100% ryes.
Absolutely, and it's just such a great example from the brand. I think to put out there. I mean, if like if you're gonna get a rye, get this rye. Again, single barrel. You can't miss.
Yeah, and at 130, I mean,
Yeah.
it does not drink like a 130 proof.
No, and then it also you get the multi-layered experience. So try it neat, of course. Add some water, you're going to have a new experience. Add some ice, you're going to have a new experience. So you're getting
Yeah,
more bang for your buck. You're getting three whiskeys for the price of one, four if you put it in cocktails.
yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
that's
those. I mean, those high proof rye cocktails actually are a lot of fun.
oh yeah, yeah. I can see this doing really well in the Sazerac.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Everyone who's joined us,
yeah,
thank you so much for joining us, Zach. I mean, amazing time. All
absolutely.
of
Anytime.
all of these four releases are available right now on Reserve Bar. We actually have new single barrel releases announced nearly weekly right now. So we have been working really hard to just develop a really great program where you can get these delivered directly to your door, either by mail or by same day delivery. And we, our hope is just to create a great story and point of view around every selection. So please read our tasting notes. Please take the time to like learn about why we picked it, because sometimes we pick some wild ones and it's really about giving an experience, right? Like there's so many single barrels out there. We want you to know why you're picking what you're getting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's there's some great bottles on there. I've been lucky enough to sample many of them, and I've never been even remotely questioning of any of it because they're all great.
Yeah. Well, and Zach, I mean, why don't you tell folks about our before we close? Just tell folks about our maker selection that's coming up soon.
Yeah, we were very lucky. We got a tour of the Maker's Mark distillery, and then we had the chance to create our own barrel with our own stave profile, which means we got to taste all the individual stave profile bourbons and then mix them and create our own profile with 10 different staves, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
sort of shuffled into a special hand of staves that then went in the barrel to finish the single barrel Maker's Mark that's coming soon to Reserve Bar. And I was very excited to be part of that. And doing that process gives you a whole new respect for Maker's Mark as well, and what's really going on there and the special things they are doing with their whiskeys, especially with the stave finishes and the special stuff they do. It's plus a lot of Cholula glass all over the distillery, which was awesome, and just a beautiful distillery in general to go to.
Well, and what each of those each of those staves imparts on the flavor of the end product is incredible. And
Dramatic, yeah.
I will never talk about this publicly again, except for right here. I will say Zach on our second selection said, "Guys, I have the perfect formula of the 10 staves." And it was on our fifth selection. We finally tried it, and it was actually the best one we tried. So, so Zach goes with whiskey.
Tip of the
We,
hat.
man, I thought I had it, and then you one upped. It was great.
That was a fun day.
Yeah. So that's fun coming up. Hopefully at the end of this year. If not, you know how distribution works. So it may be at the beginning of the year, but be on the lookout for that. That was actually a part of a 13 distillery stop trip that we took over 10 days. And so there are a number of barrel selections coming out that we're super excited about, including another barrel proof pick from Old Forester, a Jack Daniels barrel proof Tennessee whiskey, which we can't wait for,
Nice.
and some just other fun releases, including two from Heaven's Door, one representing Tennessee, one representing Kentucky. So a ton of fun there. So that's it. We're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us on this great adventure through four Topflight Series selections. Again, Zach, thank you so much for your tasting notes and your time.
Of course.
It's been a lot of fun being able to share these with you and just hear your thoughts on these as we have picked them.
It was a great pleasure, and if you want to see me talking more about these exact whiskeys, you can follow me at ZTP Whiskey on socials and UPROXX.com, where I reviewed some of these today.
Great. Well, thank you so much for everyone for joining. And again, go to Reserve Bar right now and get any one of these releases and about
Yes.
20 others that we currently have available as a part of our Topflight Series single barrel program. Zach, cheers, man. Thank you for the time.
Cheers. Take care.